Well, Bears fans, here we are, the first midweek podcast of the 2024 season, as Nick and I have watched the tape and are ready to talk through everything that we saw on rewatch of Bears Titans, plus midweek injury stuff. Rome's knee almost falls off, and a preview of Sunday night football as the Bears storm into Houston. It's all coming at you on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, right here alongside my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys, as we try to bring you the best Bears podcast we possibly can. And Nick, frankly, I think that this is probably the best show that we do. I love our post-game shows, but being able to talk through the intricate details about what we saw on the tape and break down a couple pieces of the football game that were not immediately obvious, I think is something that we're both really good at. Don't you?
Well, yeah, and the feelings aren't in it as much. We don't have the high, so we can like kind of calm down from things we're upset about, etc. Yeah, this is and plus it's still a win, so it's still like good vibes. And it's like, okay, we're kind of on to Houston. We'll touch on it, but we're kind of ready to move on. But the injuries we need to talk about, we can wait on that one. So, do you want to start off with offense, Robert, and let me know kind of what you saw because you could dive into the tape?
I don't know where to talk first because I want to talk about this defense. I'll give you some highlighters. Jalen Johnson looks like a new person. That
Dude.
cornerback one aura that you see some guys don, he's got it. Nobody was running anything
Did
on
you
him.
see his mic'd up?
Yes, it was awesome.
Oh,
I mean,
great.
I loved they don't believe in you, Jay. They don't believe in you. They
Wait,
don't
wait,
know
did you
you, Jay.
the positive self-talk we talked about through Hard Knocks? He was saying, he's like,
Awesome.
"Jay, you gotta make that play." Jay, like that's good stuff.
It's exactly the kind of play that I know this sounds silly, Bears fan, but I really believe that there are some players that can impose their will. And Jalen Johnson in that fourth quarter imposed his will. And I don't know that that's part of why Will Levis gave him an opportunity to pick off a pass. But I'll tell you what, Nick, you ask me what the difference is between this year's Jalen Johnson and last year's, it's as simple as catching the football. The second time he gets the opportunity to do it, he wasn't passing on it. Another very hidden thing, the Titans got a lot in the first half off of threatening Levis on boot actions. It's not that they were outrageously effective, it's that they were enough to get the Titans 5 to 10 yards occasionally and keep the run game alive when stretched out wide. And did you notice that in the second half, the Bears walked TJ Edwards up and deployed basically a 5-down bear front, and in so doing, widened out the defense, dared them to attack the interior of the field, which the Titans couldn't do, and took away all those boot actions and the wide zone running that had been piecing the Bears up just a quarter or two before. I know this is a simple thing to say, Nick, but it is not actually that common for defensive coordinators to adjust, and certainly not to adjust properly. I've seen way too many Dan Quinn type defensive coordinators. Yes, that's a direct name, but you watch any of his defenses, and Nick, you'll see a defensive coordinator that pumps his chest and says, "We play our game. This is how we play." And in the NFL, I believe offensive coordinators will take advantage of that whenever they get the chance. Massive kudos to the coaching staff who not only got the guys firing, but made the adjustments necessary to, Nick, it's as simple as saying the defense scored 9 points instead of having given up 17, which I think was a massive swing. Speaks for itself.
The interesting thing is if you go in past years of Flus, past years of Bears football, it always felt like the other team was adjusting and the Bears were just too late. And then the game's over. And the one thing, a statistic I think that matches up what you're talking about is if people would think of Flus's defense, it's too high, right? Cover 2, cover 4. It's everything underneath. Let your backers make the plays, like Kyler Gordon make the plays, etc. But the statistics show they played cover 1, cover 3 really heavy, which meant I dare you to throw over the top because you're not going to run to the left behind Latham and beat us up front with all this short passing. We're going to take away those lanes and have another guy down there, and the Titans couldn't match it.
They rolled another guy into the box, and they'll do it a lot, especially because, at least in my opinion, I think that Jaquan Brisker is a plus player when he's playing box safety.
Yes,
He
yes.
plays as if he's 235 pounds, despite being about 200 pounds. Tight ends have real issues blocking him, and I think that's a perfectly useful thing. When you drop him into deeper coverage, I think he loses his edge. So rolling
Mhm.
him up into the box doesn't bother me. Another couple guys I did want to mention. I thought Andrew Billings looked like he took a massive step forward. Anytime you spend an entire game dummying the 11th overall pick in Peter Skoronski from
Yeah.
last year, you're doing great. Demarcus Walker also had a day against Skoronski. And one more guy worth mentioning. Okay, the hot name is Darrell Taylor, who he just smoked JC Latham. Nick, there's a whole tangential conversation that I'm going to bring up later about how, shocker, rookies are bad. I mean, you look around the league and it's like
Yep,
Marvin Harrison, people are questioning him. JC Latham looked awful. You could
yep.
argue JC Latham was a bigger reason they lost than Nicholas Petit Ferrer. And that's not because Latham's a bust, it's because NFL rookies have it tough. And
Mhm.
the guy who's been in the league for a couple years, former sixth round pick or former second round pick in Darrell Taylor, gives him an inside fake and literally just runs around him. And that's the NFL. You have to be able to widen for that.
Yep.
I could talk about him because he had a heck of a game. But Javon Dexter, we had some pop. We had
Yeah.
some pop in the run game. We had some pop on the occasional pass rush play. I don't know if we're looking at, let's say, an all pro three technique, Nick, but better than Justin Jones. This is on the table. And
Mhm.
around week 11, week 12, I won't be shocked if Dexter's taken some steps forward towards consistency that make him a major player on this defensive line.
Well, as you just said, he's no longer a rookie, right? So now
Right.
he knows what to expect. He's making the next step. The fun thing that, and I can't remember if we said this in the preview pod, and if we did, if we missed it, shame on us. DeMarcus Walker had his revenge game against his
We
old
did
team.
miss it. And that
Yeah.
was a heck of a revenge
I
game.
know. It's like, okay, he got it. And I think I missed that on the first part of watching the tape that he didn't that he played better than I initially thought. Um Kari Blasingame did not have his revenge game, but we
No,
can
he did
wait.
not.
We can wait in the offense for that one. Um, but yeah, I did you see what I saw when I talked in our post game pod about how the D tackles got way too wide on those third downs?
Yes, it felt like the D tackles were. I Look, I see this all the time when I'm playing, I believe it or not, like silly games with my friends, right? Everybody wants to be the guy, nobody wants to be the supporting guy. So I
Mhm,
don't know how the defensive line is handing out assignments, but if one of them was supposed to play contain, they clearly both thought the other guy was going to do it a
mhm.
lot. And it's funny because I guess, Nick, I look at it sometimes and I think to myself, okay, well, they're trying to get upfield. I don't blame them for that. And there are a lot of quarterbacks on their schedule where if you let him break contain, you're going to be all right. Make Stroud run. Sure. What's he going to do? Right. But not Levis. Don't give him any free passes
Well,
because,
Stroud's running around a little more from what I saw. So
yes,
we'll talk about that one later.
man, you want to
Um,
talk about one other thing that I think was quietly a huge part of the game? I don't know if you saw it this way, but there is a major turning point in the football game. Major. You could argue there's two. But when Will Levis goes to juke out Jaquan Brisker and Tremaine Edmonds comes in full speed and lights him up, puts him
mhm,
straight down to the turf, and they show later that they're having to strap on some extra Kevlar on his ribs. From there, Will doesn't look the same. It's not
yeah.
that he looks awful, it's just that he does not look as confident or as consistent. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, Nick, about Stroud's been running around more. You make yourself a runner against some of these Bears, they'll hit. In that second
Mhm,
half, that defense was hitting with all the momentum. And I mean, when you can feel it on the all 22, because I'm
yes.
sure you've seen this, Nick, all 22 tape's kind of stale. You don't feel much momentum from all 22 tape. There's
Mhm,
no sound, there's no anything. You see so many replays that you can almost forget what the stadium feels like. But
mhm,
that defense brought some energy and they
yes.
fed off the situation. It was awesome,
Mhm.
man. I
And
mean,
you know what's interesting? Speaking of the early game Levis where he was feeling himself and pumped after his scrambles and his designed run, which I was surprised that was in, the game plan,
it
by the
was an
way.
awesome
Um,
call, though. The way
It
they
was good.
designed that, it was so
When you're
cool.
winning behind the left side of your line on run plays, when you can go, I would call it bash, right back away,
Mhm.
quarterback keep. It worked out really well for them. Um, and just on that, I know this is non-Bears like, but worried about Levis and he took a hit and what could happen after that. I'm worried about Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson. They took a lot of hits
My
and they're
gosh.
running in week
Oh my
one,
gosh, dude.
and I just hope they don't get injured and they can last. Um, Pass rush wise,
I like when other people do quarterback run game, but
yeah,
whenever the
yeah,
Bears do it, regardless of who's the quarterback, man, you're like just to make this clear, because I'm right there with you.
yeah.
When they call that for Levis, I'm like, that's a kick ass play call, especially week one where you don't think they're gonna do quarterback run game because you're like, nobody's gonna do that, right? Nobody's silly
Mhm.
enough to run Levis,
Right,
but they did, and it totally worked, and got the Titans the yardage that they needed to then end up scoring a touchdown on that drive.
mhm, mhm,
But I'm right there with you where at the end of the day, I would love to not let my quarterback take any unnecessary hits. Because if Jayden Daniels or Lamar keep that up, let alone Levis, well, like he did enough of this, there's no way they're making it 17 NFL games. No
right.
chance.
Well, I mean, and we lived through this. We had debates about, Fields running, and I'm pro it because you're +1 in the box,
Yes.
but we saw, I mean, the only person that really hasn't broken down from running yet is Josh Allen. I just think it's a matter of time.
I'm
So,
legitimately content with the Wildcat stuff, which or just because the Wildcat stuff gets you that same +1 in the box, even though
mhm,
you have to make it plain that you're running the ball.
right.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed this because it's not part of the play call. Nick, did you watch that Wildcat play back?
I did, but probably not as in
So
detail
you
as you
should go
did.
check it out. Not because I'm trying to stump for the guy, and
Yeah,
especially after the way week one was going, chances are he would have dropped it. But Valus comes across the field and he's the pitch option because anytime you run a wildcat play, you're going to pull somebody the
right,
other direction to
right.
offer an element of misdirection. But if they toss it to Valus, he probably takes it 50 yards. Like
Really?
if you go back and you look, both of the other side's defenders pinch in so hard that I think Valus, because we've seen his running speed,
That's
has
good.
free access to the edge. And then once he gets there, he's probably got a 15-yard box to beat one safety. And if he beats him, he's home free. I
Now,
mean,
Robert, everyone at home now, you know what they're saying. They're like, Valus would probably drop the pitch.
that's what I just said. I started with that. I started with that. And then on last night on stream, I made the joke that Valus probably would have caught the pitch and run into the other end zone and then just dropped the ball on the ground and left
Jim
it there.
Marshall, huh?
So it's not even a safety.
Or
Like,
he trip on the white line because it was too high, the grass.
goodness. I mean, though, there's this kid is just
Do
a
you
magnet for
do you
disaster.
do you think there's a chance he's not active?
I don't know.
But let's say Rome's out. Is there a
All right.
chance he's not active?
You are talking to Scout Brain Robert,
Uh,
not Coach Brain Robert. Okay. And Scout Brain Robert says the worst and most insulting thing Valus did on Sunday was look like the best runner on the team. Because now I had to see it. Like now I'm looking at the fact that not even Swift was able to jet out some of the yardage that Valus did. Swift had a badass hurdle, but Valus it has a step to him and some power to him that's just hard to find that blend. And it's connected to the two hands that have dropped so many punts that Valus is personally responsible for at least 3 Bears games being losses, like directly responsible. It feels like Nick saying that is implicitly, I can hear any Bears listener retching the moment I say it because this is flirting with disaster. Everybody knows it. That's where you need the coach to step in ahead of the scout
yeah.
and say, no, I'm not playing him. I'm not doing that. But for crying out loud, dude, they made Roshan inactive so they could give Valus game day carries. They obviously think there's something there, which is just, I am so between because all it's going to take, Nick, is one more of these pitches where Valus takes it up the sideline, and you've seen it. He's very natural when it comes to setting up his blockers. It's again, it's kind of insulting because it's like, Valus, why are you so good at this? I need you to just suck so you can get cut so I don't have to deal with you anymore.
Right.
But if he sets up his blockers at the NFL level, gets an edge, breaks a tackle, and houses a 42-yard run, are people going to turn around on him? You tell me. How many
Right.
touchdowns does it take for people to go, I don't know, but this is going to work?
The Well, I mean, okay, if we consider how much Bears Twitter loathes Nate Davis over, I would say very little, it's gonna take a lot of Velus Jones touchdowns for them to be like, "Yeah, okay, I trust this guy again." Because I think there's 2 parts to this. If he's not returning kicks, you're like some people be like, "Well, he shouldn't be active because there's only limited package of offensive plays," but he's a good other special teamer in terms of gunner, etcetera. So that would probably try and make him active. Or you could say activate Roshan and deactivate him. So I think there's some on both sides of it.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
There's no
it'll be
clear answer.
yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. The only other thing I want to touch on, man, I mean, in bits and pieces, you're talking about Billings and Dexter and Taylor. Sweat was too quiet. That was a disappointing game for his matchup, in my opinion. But the 5 top linemen, Robert, they got lots of pressure for
Mhm.
something that we were concerned about. I know the O line for the Titans wasn't quote unquote good, but even though they have Callahan, like the godfather of offensive line play or coaches, um, that's a good sign. Because the worst thing we were at was pressure from the defensive line. If that you got that one, the second worst thing on our unit was interior O line. So that was bad. So now it's like we only have like one thing
Right.
to band aid, and that's promising for the year.
I am a positive person. So hear me when I try to say like a good old-fashioned realist, Nick. I do think the Titans line looked really bad. And
Mhm.
while I love Andrew Billings, while I'm excited about Javon Dexter, DeMarcus Walker played like a dude. And Montez Sweat, I mean, I know you're saying that he was too quiet. He got a chip every single meaningful play after the third snap of the game. They said, okay, that's it. We're just chipping you until this game's over.
Yeah.
And of all players, Sweat's just not an anti chip guy. He doesn't have the speed to re-accelerate, if you ask me,
Yeah.
after he deals with the chip. And so I don't want to, again, it's not as simple as, oh, well, that's fine when you're being paid $25 million a year. But at the same time, if you're commanding 2 offensive players for year 1, you're certainly starting off on the right foot.
Mhm.
The Titans' offensive line did not play well. I would not expect this Bears defensive line as constructed to roll up on the Packers and generate similar pressure. But if there's one other player I do think is worth mentioning, because we mentioned Jalen Johnson, we mentioned a bunch of others. I could talk about TJ Edwards, but the one who's really worth mentioning, in my opinion, Tremaine Edmonds played the first game of his Bears career that I think was worth his contract. And
Yep.
if you know me, you know that I think linebacker contracts are massively overinflated. But that
Mhm.
play to get that stuff, that
Oh, yeah.
WWE like clothesline
Mhm.
running down a mesh guy that runs away from literally any other linebacker, but probably 2 in the
Yeah.
NFL. That was
Mhm.
one of the most important defensive plays of the game. That's what you're paid to do, among
Mhm.
some other really nice plays he made in coverage that won't get noticed because the ball didn't come out. Because if Levis had thrown it, it would have been intercepted. Tremaine had a really nice game in coverage, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
it just another part of a defense that, especially in that second half, was pitching great.
The weird thing about Edwards and Edmonds, I thought their run defense wasn't as good as I thought it would
Hmm.
be, but they were better in pass. And I mean, they shut it down a lot more in the second half, but the first half, I was like, they could have made some better plays there. All right, transitioning to offense.
Yep.
Um, I'm still gonna stay on this. I liked some of the going back and rewatching. I like some of the concepts and stuff that Waldron was doing in terms of how he was using guys and space and giving Caleb options. I thought Caleb always had some options. The personnel at times was things I thought really because I talked about this in the post game pod. DeAndre Carter is going to be the guy blocking for DJ Moore. You know, we talked about the screen to Gerald Everett. You know, there's times when it's just like the personnel stuff. I and usage. I mean, a lot of carries to Travis Homer. You just talked about Valus. Swift should be the third down guy. Why is Homer getting so many touches? I just
Right.
didn't understand the personnel as much.
No, and I want to make sure that it's clear to any listener. We're not putting bait on the hook. We're going to talk about Caleb Williams. There's
Mhm.
plenty to talk about with Caleb Williams. When it comes to formations, man, I always have a hard time critiquing the coach because he's the one coaching. So for me to critique formations at times, or not formations, but personnel usage, some of the formations is like saying, well, coach my way instead of saying coach the right way. You know what
Mhm.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's one player that I think is darn near unconscionable. I I am going to tell you something, Nick, that I doubt you expected me to say because I am a reformed Cole Kmet hater. Cole looks great. Cole looks
Mhm.
like he's about to have the season of his life. He had a couple of routes that he ran where he didn't get the ball, where he snapped out of his break. We're talking 1-2, in, out,
Yep.
done. Very,
He's
very
he's
good
quicker,
footwork.
man.
Hips I didn't think he had. And
Yep.
we're playing the shell of a man that was formerly named Gerald Everett
Yep.
and thinking that he's still athletic. And I know it's just preseason. I know it's just week one. But I have yet to see Gerald Everett do anything net positive on the football field.
Right.
And you know you're losing something with him as a blocker. But as far as him catching the ball, you're expecting him to make anybody miss. That
Mhm.
Gerald Everett screen, he gets 3 yards of space. That's the kind you got
Right.
to do something. I
Yeah.
mean, when you catch the ball and you go straight down in a setting like that, all I get to say, Nick, is, well, don't throw the ball to him anymore.
Right.
And that's not much of an evaluation, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's
Yeah.
more of a player problem than a scheme problem in that
One
case.
one fun thing I wanna give, Waldron credit for that I'm not sure if you noticed this one. We'll see. You watch all the film, okay? Do you notice what they did in the first play of the game?
Um, Specifically on the first play, it was a run, right?
They were tackles over.
Ah, they did a couple of that. Both them and Tennessee actually did a
Yeah.
couple little tackle
So
over
so
feints.
for people that don't know, Darnell Wright's your right tackle. He was actually on the left side of Braxton Jones, and they had 2 tight ends on the right side. I think it was Big Dog, and then I think it was Everett. So, it gives the appearance of a regular line with 2 tight ends, but they ran left because we got way more beef and way better run blockers that way. Like the worst lineman over there would be Everett, which would be the tight end all the way to the right. Big Dog probably equal to a tackle, for being honest. He's such
Yeah.
a good blocker. And now you have so much beef on the left, and we had a 6-yard gain. So I thought that was interesting. That's a nice little, again, a good thing to put on tape. So then defense is like, okay, now we got to play. Like the whole point of a coordinator, y'all, at least when I did stuff, is is you either put stuff in a game plan. So the defensive coordinator is like, dang it, like Nick, why do you got to put this in? So they got to make all the cards and like, okay, this is how we're going to adjust. And they got to practice with it just so you have to waste 5, 10, half hour, an hour of your week. That's the point of the offensive coordinator. Or you just on game day, wait, what is this? We never saw something like this. And then my favorite, Robert, I'll just make this brief to show the kind of the point is I would always run a spread offense, okay, and my quarterback was my best runner. I ran empty. And my favorite part was going back watching the film and watching the linebackers being like, "Wait, hold," and they're looking back and forth and trying to communicate. They're like, "Where do I go?" All of a sudden, it's like, "Pew!" It's 15 yards. We ran it back to back, 15 yards, touchdown. It's just like exactly. That's why you do. That's what coordinators do. You want to make them in conflict mentally, so then they're slow physically. So the in terms of the offense, okay, what were your thoughts on Caleb?
Let's enter the negative zone because
Sure.
anybody listening to this podcast is probably 23 minutes in now saying, well, they've been awfully positive. And that is who we are. At the end of the day, we're going to talk about as much as we can in the nicest way possible. Because what's the point of just ripping apart professional football players that put in thousands more hours work than certainly you and I did
Yep.
into what they're doing?
Yep.
But obviously it didn't work, Nick. Obviously they tallied 148 yards. And what worries me is that the raw yardage? Like, does that even exclude
Right.
sacks? But
I
so
don't even know. It's bad, just bad.
it's tough. So why didn't it work? Well, the good news is that Caleb Williams got given a full NFL game plan. If you ask me, this is Waldron's offense. I've talked to you about it before, Nick. It's fairly thin. Thin in the sense of they're not running the Luke Getsy 4.5 second resolving concept. Like, they're not going to run dagger at the 25-yard mark. They're not going to run a 3-set corner route where the receiver's first going to feint the drag route, then stem upfield, then break out. And Fields has to sit in the pocket for forever and a day before he sees any of it.
Right.
If anything, Nick, I would even tell you that it was an even thinner version of the Waldron offense that was meant to mimic the air raid. And the good news is Caleb Williams actually carried the mental weight of this offense pretty
Yes.
well. He
Yes.
didn't carry the mental weight of the moment, and he played without any rhythm at all. And if you go back and you watch young quarterbacks across the years, my favorite one that I'll throw at anybody listening, go back and watch rookie Brock Purdy. And you're going to see a player that's literally bouncing all around the pocket. And he's panicky with his feet. And most of what he does is just check the ball down to Christian McCaffrey. And if somehow you get lucky enough to where you've got an NFL Plus access and you can pull some tape from 2022, you'll notice that he's missing guys that are open down the field nearly the entire game where he's just not throwing the football. He's just
Right.
throwing to Christian McCaffrey because for most rookies, that's what you do, right?
Mhm.
You kind of panic. You don't really see the field. And like we saw with Bo Picks, you throw 5 interceptions and the defense catches some fraction of them because they're
Mhm.
never going to catch them all, right?
Yep.
Caleb had 29 pass attempts that we tracked. He had 2 sacks that don't count as pass attempts, and he had at least 2 scrambles, and he had 1 turnover-worthy play. And you can tell me whether a 3.3% turnover-worthy play rate is considered medium. I actually don't know, but according to most rookies, that's pretty good.
That's good. It is good.
I mean, he knew where he was trying to go with the football, and
Mhm.
in the overwhelming majority of cases, the mental rep was there. So I could say more, Nick, but I have a problem as it is with holding onto the microphone. So I'll give you one more analogy. Anytime anybody, Nick, draws something up on the whiteboard and then goes out and tries to execute what they saw on the whiteboard on the football field, it looks different when you're on the football field.
Yeah.
And this looked to me like that classic moment of the theory says to do this. And in practice, Tev Jenkins is getting mauled by Tavondre Sweat, who looks like a beast.
Oh my
We're
goodness,
losing
so
battles up front. We can't pick up a stunt, but also some of these guys are open, and I'm not like certain they're open. I don't know the rhythm of this. We ran a bunch of option routes in camp, but we didn't run them in preseason because we thought that we could pretend that Tennessee wouldn't think they were in the playbook. Like,
Right.
yeah, come on, guys. And so everything looked really rusty. There's
Mm.
some Murphy's Law stuff where things that could go even worse did. Keenan Allen dropping a valid touchdown pass, another potential touchdown pass to Keenan Allen getting batted through no fault of Caleb's. But Caleb made too many mistakes. You can't
Yeah.
go, 14 for 29 and have a guy on a podcast saying, but actually you did great. It's more that, Nick, I am sick of mental mistakes. So
Yes.
living in the world of, look at how mentally well he attempted to play the game. Made every physical mistake under the sun, but we can fix those. Or at
Yeah.
least we should be able to. That's where I came away. Not
Mm.
everybody's going to agree with that. And I know way too many Bears fans, you've already probably seen them, Nick, that are going full doomer and saying, well, he threw for 93 yards. This thing's over.
Mm.
You have way more time to get before you have to go there.
Right.
And I
So-
was pretty encouraged. What'd you see?
Yeah, I mean, to digress back to the one turnover worthy play, I pulled this up just for a reference. The interception percentage, so literally passes that were intercepted on average for a quarterback last year, was 2.3% of attempts, was the league average. So, and that's not turnover worthy, which obviously would be significantly higher. So I think 3% would be pretty low, for being honest.
And it was
and-
straight at the guy. It's a
Yeah.
bad read.
well, there's someone on Bears Twitter was saying, against Houston, against their cover 4, we need to hit those intermediates. And I'm like, that's right where the pick almost went with Caleb on that dig, just sitting right there. Because cover 4, those safeties are going to be a lot tighter, y'all, versus cover 2. Anyways, digressing back. The mental part of the game is the most important part of a quarterback. We've talked about this for a long time. It's what I believe as a quarterback coach of 14 years. It's what I've learned. It's what we've seen on tape. when you can handle the mental load, the game slows down.
Hmm.
And for the first game of his career, it didn't feel like mentally he was making poor decisions. He was going to the right spot with the football. You could argue one may be here, one may be there. I
Yeah.
saw some, I think it was Nicholas Moriano was like, okay, slot fade to DeAndre Carter, but what about Rome on the right? And I'm like,
No, 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 no. Baloney. Baloney.
you have more
Baloney.
space. Yeah, you have more.
Carter. So look,
Yeah.
everybody listening, Nick, I'm sorry. You fired me up. Okay.
Well,
Eh,
we're gonna
Whenever
agree. I know that because you know football.
this anybody on YouTube, I'm rubbing my face right now, or on Spotify or Apple or whatever. So here's a problem, Nick. When people screw up a play, a bunch of fans go through and they watch the play, and then everybody just tries to figure out what the guy should have done differently. And for some reason, we never settle on the answer of throw the ball better. Because
Yeah.
if you're going to throw that ball, you just have to land it in a spot where Carter can do anything with it. Now, I would have loved it if Carter won that a little cleaner. He's got enough space out there where
Yeah.
go win. Instead of getting one step, go get three. But I digress. Everybody sees Rome Odunze on the outside, and he won his rep. Why aren't we throwing with to Rome? There's a constant relationship, everybody, between taking the theoretical best read possible and then accounting for personnel within a play package. You see this with the Eagles all the time, where Jalen Hurts basically flips the bird to whatever the play call was and throws it to A.J. Brown anyways. That is buddy ball. This works in the NFL to a pretty hefty degree. You know what I mean,
Mhm.
Nick?
Yeah.
If the guy's good enough, then yeah, Tyreek probably is open. Yes, that route technically makes him a decoy on this play, but you know what? He's open, so I'm throwing him the ball. And
Mhm.
when Caleb tried to play buddy ball, it was a basic combination where you've got two receivers to each side. Each receiver, the inside receiver is running a post, the outside receiver is running a go. Right side of the field, it's Rome, it's DJ Moore. Left side of the field, it's Keenan Allen, it's DeAndre Carter. Later in the game, Keenan chooses to play buddy ball, and he looks towards the Rome and DJ side. And Rome runs his route way too close to the inside linebacker, doesn't widen at all. There is no post window because of it. And if you want to go check this one out, Keenan Allen across from him, Nick, widens out towards the outside of the field and then breaks back in to where there's this great bang post window that's very NFL, but Caleb's not looking that way because he picked the side with all the talent and it gets him in trouble. Going all the way back to DeAndre Carter. That slot fade has the entire field to work with.
Yes.
Rome is working a must outside release go against the only position group that the Titans actually have decent defenders at, outside corner. So I'm not.
Was that Snead too?
I think it was. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't say yes or no for sure, but
Okay, I thought it was Snead.
Snead got beat a lot. And so good for
Did.
Rome that he beat him down the field. But there's a point where I say this on stream all the time, Nick. I'm sure you've said it in your own meetings. You can't abuse the clicker. Just because you see somebody won
No.
doesn't mean pre-snap you knew he was going to win, especially in Rome's first game, for the love of goodness. I wish it wasn't DeAndre Carter running that too. I wish that the Bears had enough receivers where you could just put Tyler Scott in that spot because I like Tyler Scott. But clearly, the Bears coaches don't like him as much as I do. And I'll
Well-
defer to them in what I haven't seen. So I don't know, Nick. That to me was the right read. We have to make a better throw. And that's okay. It happens, right?
Well, like you said, there's so much more to it. And yeah, it's you can pause film, take picture, look at this guy so open. That's not what football is. And
No.
like because what you were kind of talking about before was PSL. And so the difference, y'all, between pure progression and PSL is pure progression is like, hey, you're going to go from this receiver, no matter what, 1 to this receiver 2 to this receiver 3. And then that's probably it in the NFL. In college, maybe you can go to 4 or 5. That's pure progression. Like the play is designed, you're going to look to, whatever it is, slot to backside, maybe come back, something like that. PSL is you pick a side. And part of what you're talking about personnel wise, like if you're the Titans, right? You look at this. I think it was Keenan was outside left, then it was Carter in the slot, and then the right side you'd have your, Moore and Rome. And if you look at that and you're the Titans, you're like, he's not throwing to DeAndre Carter. which is why DeAndre Carter's the most open, has the most space to work with because the safety is occupying other places. That's why you can't. I and as a quarterbacks coach, I hate this when quarterbacks are like, I'm going to throw to this guy no matter what. I got it when Mike Tice had the Brandon Marshall ball and just Cutler just throw it to Marshall. I get it, but the football side of me, the coach side of me says this has more space. There's going to be a new Aaron. I can't believe I'm referencing this. A new Aaron Rodgers documentary. I don't know if you saw the preview to it. Okay, Bears fans, bear with me here, or bear with us.
Got it.
um, he talks in the preview and says, "Hey, it's all about percentages. We don't throw slot fades in, or I'm sorry, we don't throw end zone fades as much anymore because that's such a low percentage of completing that for a touchdown." And Rogers is like, yep, this fade is 20%. You back shoulder it, it has this much percent. This has this percent, right? And he's just talking in theory. But slot fades, everybody. I am telling you, that is the number one route for completion percentage. That route has so much space because the number one receiver, so that's the outside receiver, runs something shallow, right? Maybe an out, maybe a hitch, whatever. The slot widens and has the area from the hash, basically, all the way to the sideline. So Caleb could turn that into almost a corner route. He could back shoulder him. He could lead him. He has so much area to work with. The corner literally has nowhere to win.
Yeah,
If you want to look at where this wins all the time, go back to Jaden Daniels' Heisman Trophy season last year at LSU. He
100%.
threw more slot fades to anybody, and more guys are like, he's so amazing. I'm like, all he's throwing is slot fades, the easiest thing ever. It works everywhere. So it was the correct read, and I thought Caleb continually made good reads. The one thing I
Hit
would
that
say,
throw, Carter may seriously score. That
yeah,
gets said a
yeah,
lot, but
yeah, better throw. The one thing I would add in, Robert, if there was a negative to his mental day, he had a delay of game. And I put those on the quarterback.
oh
So
yeah.
that would, I think the biggest negative was that one. Outside of, you said option routes, placing the wrong shoulder, thinking he was going to run versus sit, all that kind of stuff. Those are little things. The biggest negative I thought was the delay of game.
Oh, I mean, that's the other piece to this, right? Robert is sitting here saying that he had a good mental day. Well, if he had a great mental day, then they probably would have picked up more than 148 total yards, and Caleb probably still would have found a way to throw for at least triple digits in the passing world. So he
Mhm.
obviously didn't have that great a mental day. There were enough mental gaffes. And like we heard from Caleb today in his presser, he was too quick in his drop. He's just playing too fast in
Yeah.
general. But I also think, Nick, that there was a lack of natural rhythm that comes with experience, personally, where there's a way that you get used to timing your drop up with the receiver. And Caleb is so loose because Nick Foles has to hit the back of his drop, and from a body mechanics perspective, drive off the back of his drop to generate NFL velocity. Caleb doesn't. This creates, I think, a much longer road to true discipline with your drops, et cetera, because Caleb can sit from a standstill leaning backwards and whip the ball to his target. It's
Right.
why you see some bad habits form.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Like, I could tell you about how there were guys up front that struggled. I actually think the All-22 was a little kinder to Coleman Shelton than I think some people would expect.
Mhm.
Shelton still looked pretty bad, but he looked pretty bad in the way we knew he would be pretty bad. You
Yep.
put him up against elite strong NFL DTs, he's going to get walloped. But he was a
Mhm.
gamer that tried his hardest, I guess is the
He
best way I
did.
could put
He
that.
did.
And he got dummied on a stunt. I thought Ryan Bates looked flat out bad. And I wish I wasn't reporting that, because that puts us in help me, Nate Davis. You're my only hope, because Tevin Jenkins, dude, looked bad. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes I know you line up and the guy across from you just wins. Tavondre Sweat looked like the second coming of Dexter Lawrence, and that
So
may
good.
just be who he is. But also, you would hope that Tevin Extension Jenkins, if he really wants to get paid, has a little more in the tank than letting a rookie do that to him.
He
I think it's
he
like,
seemed like he had low effort, man. Like, some of those plays, he just didn't finish the blocks. I'm like, "Why don't you move your feet? Why don't you replace your hands after he did something?" Like, it just seemed a little lazy to me.
I'm gonna whisper it into the microphone, Nick. Maybe he's hurt. Maybe he's dealing something that he
Mm,
doesn't want to tell anybody. Because if he gets hurt and he misses a game, there goes that money. But whatever
yeah.
he did on the field was frankly worse.
I I I just
Because
I just want everyone to remember what Robert said, and this isn't just a Nick thing. Nate Davis is the best right guard because the one thing going back and looking, Coleman Shelton
Nate
is
definitely blew that sack on the 19-yarder where I think he's got to get over and seal that gap in outside zone play action. I
man,
believe, I
I
believe,
disagree.
so I think he needs to be there, but then or whoever the lineman was that got him also shot the gap pretty well.
So okay, the play that we're talking about is a fake stretch, whatever, fake outside zone, boot, throwback screen. And I mean, so Sweat is the one had or no, it was Sebastian Day, was it?
It was,
I
yeah,
don't
it was the third one.
so so he was a one tech opposite Shelton. And so Davis is on the other side of that. So he doesn't even see him or think he's going to have him. So he slants hard inside. If you block him, let's say Davis is like, yep, we have to maintain this guy at the line of scrimmage. Then you're blocking that guy into the screen. That's not the purpose of a screen. The purpose of the screen is to lose grace, lose with dignity is kind of what I would always call it. That was losing embarrassingly by Shelton. So I just don't know how much of a piece you want Davis to get on him. And I'm sure he just didn't expect him to slant that far.
Nobody did. I mean, that's the other piece of this, right? Is when Caleb did do something well, a lot of times his teammates let him down. I'm using Nate Davis as as a springboard here, so that we don't spend a full hour breaking down the last game. We're already at 40 minutes.
Well, how about
Like,
this? The worst rep I thought Nate Davis had was he allowed I would say a half of pressure, and Caleb had to roll left. You know the play I'm talking about?
yep.
I think that was his worst rep. If I'm being personal,
Was that the early one, or was that the one
it,
a little later?
that was early. I thought.
And that's the other thing, Bears fans. My personal opinion, I think some of the early pressures that Caleb faced kind of kickstarted the jitters. I mean, we saw it. Caleb
Yeah.
ran for a first down, beat somebody in the open field, and settled down for a couple throws. I mean, it's not perfect, but early in the game, that NFL pressure, I don't want to say it spooked him, but let's put it this way, Nick. He wasn't wearing a red jersey anymore. And it was
Yeah.
pretty clear on that first play that these guys were coming. And
Right.
another piece to the Bears game that is not going to go noticed. I love Rome Odunze. I have high hopes for Rome Odunze. I thought Rome made like 4 mental mistakes
He
in
did not
terms
have a
of
good game.
in terms of little route running technicalities where maybe I'm just caping for my quarterback. I'm always going to try to cite my bias, Bears fan, so that if I say something objectionable, at least you know that I'm giving you permission to disagree with me.
Yeah.
But I thought that there were a couple of those, Nick, where Rome, for instance, on shallow cross on the first play, he just keeps running. It's zone. Every shallow cross I've ever seen is if it's zone, stop. And if it's
Yes.
if it's man, keep running. He just sends himself behind a linebacker. Then the other play, the one where it looks like Caleb puts the ball on the wrong shoulder. Caleb looks like he thinks Rome is going to stop and then
Yeah.
throws him away from the defender. Rome then overruns the football. A couple plays later, we see the other play where Caleb looks like he's just completely inaccurate and he dirts the ball right next to Rome, where Rome hits his curl, turns his shoulders, and then shuffles again
Yes.
further to his right,
Yes.
and the
Yep.
ball lands where he turned around. Then there's a couple other miscommunications. You saw an obvious argument between Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen on an option route where I think Keenan was correct. And I don't know how Caleb thought he saw slant, but the moment he felt like he
I
needed
think
to,
I think he thought the defender was going to go with DJ Moore,
maybe he
and then it
did,
would
but
widen that
but then
area.
he throws the ball so low that I'm looking at him like, Caleb, you already know he's gonna have to catch this on the ground.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's obviously not the slant route.
I know.
But I can't help but look at this, Nick, and say there were a lot of people that messed up. Two of the primary starters on this Bears team are rookies, and there's an old saying in football that for every rookie you start, take a win out of the win column and put it in the loss. So I personally thought Caleb wore a lot of Rome's mistakes because you get the broadcast copy. He misses the receiver. Why would the receiver be wrong? But
Yes.
it's just a disjointed effort from everybody not named
Mhm.
DJ Moore. And that
DJ played
and
well.
Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright looked like he was yawning, like one of the easiest pass pro performances that I've seen in his career so far, as it was just like, this is boring. Give me something hard.
Well, Robert, and again, that just goes to tell you The preseason shows us nothing because we were worried about Darnell Wright. And
Nothing at
then look at him,
all,
he's
dude.
good in week 1.
Nothing
But
at all.
to your point about I thought Rome didn't look good either. I thought he played like a rookie, not like a first round top 10 pick rookie. His PFF ranking among receivers out of 107 players, what do you think he ranked?
Thinking 102nd.
100, which is rough. But again, as we talk about, I don't care a ton about that. It's 1 week, and we're going to preview the Texans here in a little bit. And Robert liked my reference with this.
Can I?
I'm not gonna reference all of the stats the Texans had in week 1 because I told Robert I was like, it's just 1 game. And this is just 1 game.
Nick,
So it's not like this is who they're going to be indicative of the entire season. It's just 1 snapshot of 1/17th of the season.
Nick, can I give you the most big data, cutthroat Bears take possible? I'm thinking it, okay? And chances are, if I'm thinking it, somebody else is thinking about it. But strap in. This is the worst one, okay? You and the listeners, you are not going to hear a more cutthroat take possible, right? Statistically, Nick, 50% of first round picks don't work out. And if that means that we come away with this thing in 5 years, the Bears have a franchise quarterback, but they need to figure out what their plan is at receiver because DJ Moore is getting old and Rome just never quite found it. I will live in that world and I'll be all right, if that makes sense. I don't think we're there yet. Rome looks like a rookie, but he's still doing this thing that I saw in Washington where he doesn't finish his routes. And I thought he was doing it because he didn't think Penix had the arm, but there's a dagger clear out route, for instance. I don't know if you saw this one, Nick, where Rome just doesn't finish it. And he just stops in the middle of what's going to be a really nice little gap for Caleb to throw into. And now the safety is camped out on the route and DJ's running into nothing because our clear out route didn't even clear it out. And it's little things where I'm like, Rome, I mean, you seem like way too cerebral a guy to not know better than that. So why are we putting that on tape? I mean, talk to anybody and they'll tell you how important it is to not have that stuff on tape.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't know. And I'm not worried. I can't say that I'm not worried about Caleb and then immediately tell you I'm worried about Rome. But at least so far through the preseason, little things like standing out of bounds and not finishing a clear out and fumbling on your first moment that you touched the ball. There's a point where it's like, oh, we're kind of seeing like everything pointing the wrong direction.
I will say this, Robert, okay? Since we like to be a positive podcast at times, if anyone was concerned about Rome Odunze high point in the football, y'all, he went up and got that ball.
Oh, he got that ball.
Immediately when that deflected, every time a pass is deflected, I immediately think that's a pick. Like it's ingrained in me
and
as a quarterback coach.
That's a pick play. The safety should have caught it instead of letting it launch off his face.
Right.
So
right.
I'm right there with you. Can't say this enough. Rome has won enough of these dirty routes that he's run, and dirty as in good, sick, awesome. Trying to think of synonyms here. He's won enough of these routes with his feet that I'm thinking the rest will come. I'm not worried. It's a bummer that he has a grade 1 MCL sprain. And Nick, I don't know how you're feeling. I do think Flus is being coy with us. I don't think Rome's playing.
No way.
After an official sprain, I think he's getting the week off. But he's going to say day to day because he wants the Texans to plan for him. Yeah. But all in all, the offense was a mess. And the run game, I don't like that I predicted this well. The run game isn't good enough to be the kind of thing you can lean on right now. And if it becomes that, then we're going to have to get there.
Well, I think not against those 2 D tackles.
No, definitely not. So maybe that changes.
I think against Houston, I'll get into, I think the run game is something that we're really going to need.
Well, definitely. I also can't help but think, Nick, look, you and I got hopped up on Bears Kool-Aid, and right now, if Caleb wants to hit a 4,300-yard season, he's got some catching up to do. So maybe we got a little overexcited. Like, that's okay. It happens.
I think it's still possible.
We do it with every rookie, though. So if we were wrong, I'm fine with that. But Caleb is way closer to a 225-yard passing game than you would think with 93
Oh
yards.
my
Like,
gosh, yes.
there's just a couple things that you gotta, like a couple wires that you're trying to plug together. And if you get them plugged together, his yardage
It
could double very
okay,
quickly.
if he completes the Keenan out and up, the DeAndre Carter slot fade, and the Keenan Allen massive out sail, that's another 100 yards at least.
Oh yeah, I mean that actually might be like 120 yards at
I
that point.
know. So and
And
so
Blazing Game
I
missed his block, and we've seen that enough.
right,
Like
right.
on the Keenan Allen sale that probably gets 30. Like all this to say, I guess we've watched some games where different quarterbacks throughout the Bears lexicon threw for 140 yards and looked lifeless. And the worst part is, Nick, guys like you and I will come on to podcasts afterwards and we'll say, I don't know how to tell you this, but that was all that was out there according
Mhm.
to the plays that were called and the limitations of the quarterback. You weren't getting more than that. That is a massive bummer. This game was much different. This game was, we're actually really close if we can just
Yeah.
settle down and throw the ball
And
like you
and I
normally do.
and it's not hopium either. Like it's legit. Like it's oh it tipped a pass. He dropped a pass. He's normally accurate and went a little wide. I do want to come back to the O line thing because I don't think we finished that, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. But I think it's something that Bears Twitter really cares about. Is I'm going to reverse course on. I was really hard on Coleman Shelton. Okay, and
You were mad.
I was pro put Ryan Bates at center and put Nate Davis at right guard. I still believe Nate Davis is the best right guard on the team after watching the tape. And that's not that I don't like Ryan Bates. And I like Matt Pryor too, y'all. But Matt Pryor is strong at the point of attack. Matt Pryor cannot move like Nate Davis can move. And so in this zone scheme, Nate Davis is the best right guard. If you really want to have outside zone be like your only run play, then Ryan Bates at center, I get it. But Coleman Shelton has played center and started in the NFL for a year and a half. He had a bad game. And again, you're hearing me, right? This is you guys are my witness. I'm gonna I'm pro Coleman Shelton at center, right, for this week. And I think Ryan Bates, he's been a career backup, y'all. Despite getting the contract matched in Buffalo, he went back to the bench. And I think that's part of it. He's always had this like potential, but it hasn't really come together. I
Right.
think he's a really high-end backup. And I think that's probably where he should be. And I don't think the O-line, interior O-line, they had a bad game against two good D tackles. I don't think it's like as bad as last year. So I think we need to have a little bit more, okay, I'm going to trust in them figuring this out for moving forward because I like the backups. I like Matt Pryor. I like Ryan Bates, the backup everywhere. I like Bill Murray. So I don't think it's like, oh man, we're dead. Caleb's never going to have time. I think they'll figure it out. And I'm going to be positive with Coleman and Shelton in week 2.
We'll see if this is the case. I think you should be positive. Dude, the Bears are not in a position where they can start Doug Kramer, and I'm pretty against starting Bates. Not just because of this last game, which definitely, I mean, that weighs into it, but I don't understand the purpose of switching centers. That basically means like switching the speed at which the snap rotates. And we already dropped a snap. I mean, one of
Well,
my
he
favorite
bobbled a
plays.
couple too.
I know. One of my favorite plays looking back, Nick. Caleb checked to the spear screen
Yep.
for DJ
I
Moore.
told you it was open.
But not only was it open, he checked to it. He's a rookie in his first game, and he made a signal just below the line that Gerald Everett passed to the guy outside of him. DJ, Gerald, and the other guy were going to do something else, but they audibled. I do love seeing a commanding audible. To
Yep.
me, that is the only, what's the word I'm looking for? That is the only evidence we have of the quarterback going through a pre-snap progression. And
Mhm.
Caleb has the right idea, and he drops the freaking snap. Like the physical mistake of physical mistakes, right? But
Yep.
here's the thing, Bears fan. Here's the decision you're going to have to make because I know there's somebody out there listening that's like still not convinced, okay? You either think that Caleb is not even draftable, that the first round mock guy was totally right
Oh, man.
because he can't catch NFL snaps. He's completely inaccurate with the football. His footwork is haywire. You think all of these things are just who Caleb is, that maybe he can read the ball or read the game, and that's fine. But physically speaking, he's an untalented loser. or you think he was nervous, playing way too fast, had his mind way out in front of his body, and was not in a rhythm, which
Mhm.
is frankly where I land, Nick. I don't know that that means he's going to turn into the second coming of Aaron Rodgers meets Patrick Mahomes anytime soon. We're not there yet. But he made so many physical mistakes. And dude, Nick, if he couldn't catch a snap, he would not have been the number one overall pick. Like,
Right, right. I'm sure you watch JT's breakdown, right? And JT's got his own thoughts. And again, I respect JT a lot, but Keenan Allen was still good.
yes,
Okay.
Keenan
Keenan Allen got separation.
JT wants big, fast, athletic
Yep.
separators. There are 10 of them. And like in the league, there are 10 guys that meet JT's definition. Everybody else has to find something else. I thought Keenan Allen looked exactly like what we saw on the Chargers tape. He's going to separate by maybe a yard and a half. And he kind of has to be the first read, because if he's the third read, dude, he's not going to be there.
Nope.
Like, I mean, he's not going to be open. Like the only way to get $23 million of value out of Keenan Allen is unfortunately to kind of make him the guy, even if it's a little artificial.
Well, in a game where you were down and you needed a touchdown, he got open on the out. Okay, he dropped it. I get that. I will acknowledge that one. And the next play got wide open on a slant. So
Yep.
when you needed him to separate in the money, the gold zone they call it, your boy got open.
Yep. And that I'm not telling you guys. Nick, this offense is too talented to duplicate 148-yard performances.
Th-
I mean,
that's the worst game of the season. I will book that. I would bet that in
has to be.
Vegas.
Has to be.
I'd
And
bet that in Vegas.
and when stuff doesn't work, then yeah, your offensive coordinator looks like a doofus, and your quarterback looks awful, and the line looks bad, and you can't run the ball, and you feel like you're wasting a bunch of talent at receiver. And I get it. When the snowball rolls, it rolls fast. But I'm not telling you it's definitely fine. What the main thing is, Nick, I've seen week one overreactions come from the fact that we think we know these teams and we don't know these teams, right? That Titans D line looked really good. The Titans secondary did not look very good, but the linebackers looked pretty good. So maybe this Titans defense rolls out against the Packers and just rocks Malik Willis, delivers a
Uh,
like a just a
so
worldly butt kicking.
week 3, right? Because
Sorry, you're
they're
right.
cold
It is
week 3. Yeah.
week 3. So point
Yeah.
being that the Titans go on to have like that very
Yeah, maybe.
NFL 7-10 season where their offense is underperformant, just like we thought they would be, but the defense is even better than people thought they would.
The the one thing that I thought would have helped the Titans, and then we're gonna move on here, is,
We got it.
um, DeAndre Hopkins played very limited snaps, which is what I kinda thought it was gonna be with that knee and that MCL, so I think that definitely helped them not get a lot more offense in the second half, but if he gets more healthy, sure, I think they could be a scrappy team. I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs, but they could be scrappy. So, speaking of knees and injuries, Romadunze, grade 1 MCL. Speaking of someone, Robert, myself, y'all, had an MCL due to getting chop blocked in football. Okay. Mine was worse than his. I was a grade 2, I would say the high end of 2. My knee swelled up to 2.5 times its size. They put a they put a needle in, and the doctor looked at me. He's like, "If this is clear, you're good. If this is bloody, you are done." And it comes out, it's just all bloody. So anyway, Roma a grade 1. I like that he played afterwards. I mean, I was able to play on mine afterwards. The adrenaline kicks in. You just don't have everything that you have in your arsenal. Um, as you said, I think Flus is kind of messing with us. I don't think Rome's good this week, but also from my perspective, Robert, we're expected to lose this week.
Oh
If
yeah,
you
house
want to
money,
have
baby.
just expected, right? The line is +6 for Chicago right now. If you keep Rome out this week to have him full power weeks 3 through 17, I would rather do that or keep him out actually 2 weeks to make sure you don't tweak it again, to make sure that it doesn't turn into an ACL, which obviously a weak MCL can actually hurt the other ligaments. I would be fine with that. So I actually don't want him to play this week to make sure he's good for the rest of the year.
I'd be fine with it, but I would be shocked if Matt Eberflus and this Bears team, just because of who they are, man. Like you and me looking at the chessboard, yeah, I'd talk to the doctors and I'd basically say, don't clear him. We don't pay you to make dumb decisions. Tell him
Yep.
he's not good to go. But the Flus and the Bears, they got to be looking at this weekend thinking that they can win. That not only they
I think
can,
I
but
think
going
I
to.
think they can win. I'm just saying
Oh
I'm
yeah.
thinking long
I,
term.
I just don't think you and I, or actually, let me be honest, Nick. I don't think anybody in the media circuit. I'm gonna levy this criticism at everybody. We don't do enough thinking like football players. Football players cannot wake up and walk into the facility and work out for 4 hours and then sit in 8 hours of meetings and then sit through more meetings with more homework and wake up the next day if they don't think they have a chance at winning the ball game. Football
Yeah.
players and football coaches are ridiculously positive. I would even say delusional, especially when you're on a bad team. The Commanders do not think that they suck, even though I do. The Giants think they're going to win this next week's game, even if
Robert,
they're not.
as a coach of 14 years, I've okay, maybe one game my whole career I was like, we have no chance. Other than that, I'm like, okay, if this goes well, I can make this. That was the game that I
That's what
coached
I'm
against.
saying.
That's the game I coached against JC Latham. I was like, this is not gonna go. So I'm with you. I get it. But
Somebody
I
else
was
has to be the
initially
tactician that saves Rome from himself because the
yeah.
Bears, I would envision that Flus and the offensive staff would be looking and saying, we need every tool in our toolbox. Why
Mhm.
would we not want Rome to play?
I get it. Yeah, watching the injury because I watched it live and I was like, "Oh, that's bad." I always hate when guys go in the back of their legs,
Hmm.
but he got up and I was like, "Okay." Um, Watching it and then seeing a grade 1 MCL, I was relieved. Were you?
Yes. I mean, it's the best outcome you're going to see. I
Mm.
was on a lacrosse team that had not one, not two, but seven guys tear their ACLs. And I watched all of them play another couple minutes and then jog off the field. And then we found out it was an ACL tear. So,
What?
oh yeah, oh yeah. There was some really bad turf, but so our home stadium was not well
What
put
was
together.
it in Brazil?
No, it was way too grippy. Like it was that
Oh,
2011 AstroTurf that's been
yeah.
totally overhauled since then. No, wait, it was laid down in like 2005. But I digress. The point being that it, that was good to see. Keenan Allen ending up hurt is hilarious, not shocking. It's like, thanks, Keenan.
Are you worried?
No.
I'm not worried. He's well, okay, so for those that are wondering, here's the injury report, okay? Limited Pickens groin. I think that's a positive. He's even practicing. Blossom game, hand knee, which by the way had a terrible game. Whenever he was in the
Yeah, that
game,
was tough.
it was not a plus EV play to have him in the game. Bates limited with shoulder elbow. I think that's just how it's going to be right now. Um, DMP was Keenan with the heel, Rome obviously with the knee. Man, the other one that got me is Demarcus Walker didn't practice with a foot.
Yeah, not great. We took more damage in this game than I think than we thought we did. And
Yeah.
it continues like you're saying. Us fans, yeah, this game is house money. This is extra credit. You needed to win Tennessee so that you had that first win out of the season, so that if the worst happens in Houston and you get run out of the building, you can walk out of it saying, 1-1. Don't worry about it. Let's
Mhm.
go beat the Colts. Maybe you win. But like you're saying, Demarcus Walker not practicing. We record this on a Wednesday night, so there, for all intents and purposes, you may read this on Thursday, and Walker could immediately be limited. It's possible. With veterans, guys get practice off all the time, just like you're talking about with Keenan. The
Yep.
good news for both Walker and Keenan, if you're a Bears fan, Nick, you may need to check me on this with Walker. I believe both of them are in contract years, meaning that neither of them can afford to miss games.
Walker, I thought he has another year. I'll
Because I
double
thought it
check
was a
it.
2-year deal for Walker. And
Oh,
that would obviously mean last year and then this year. But if not, then Walker could be trying to campaign for an extension anyways. 3-year deal?
It was a 3 year. Yep. His deal next year is a 1 year deal with just under 6 million cap hit.
then Keenan's the one where you know he's going to play because he can't be missing games. Because if he starts missing games now, he's not getting anything close to the money that he wants in his potential upcoming extension.
Mm. The going other side of the ball though, Houston, Dalton Schultz starting tight end, DMP with an ankle, and it doesn't sound good. He might not play, which that would, I mean, help offset some of this if Rome can't play. MJ Stewart, backup safety, strong safety. He's got a knee. He didn't practice either. So that's all they're kind of beat up. But transitioning from injuries to the Texans, I'm going to go through just some of the base stuff, kind of their
Do it.
personnel, and then I think Robert's going to have some film stuff here.
Give us the
So
old 1-2.
what do you got?
Give us the overview. You always
Yeah,
take us
yeah,
through the stats.
yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not going to give all of the stats because, again, like I said, it's one game and it is what it is. But I have some interesting things. So, um, PFF's preseason O-line rankings has the Houston O-line as 22nd. The Colts had a lot of pressure actually on CJ Stroud. They got Tunsil at left tackle. You remember him. Kenyon Green, former first round pick, hasn't really lived up to the billing. He was a little bit better. Juice Scruggs, which I know is someone Robert liked at center. He actually graded out the best in week one
I
for
didn't like
them.
him second round pick though. Anyways,
I know. Yeah, yeah. Shaq Mason, he's old now. He's 32. Used to play with actually a few teams. Tampa, I know. He's decent. Titus Howard, former first round pick, has been really a bust there. Dalton Schultz is the tight end. We know the three receivers. Nico Collins, I think, is a star. I
dog.
think is underrated in the NFL. He was at Michigan, y'all. 6'3", probably 215. He can win down the field. He can win intermediate. He's not a burner. I would if you want someone to kind of think of him like, think of like maybe a slightly more athletic version of Alshon Jeffrey is kind of the vibe that I get from him. Stephon Diggs, he's more limited late in his career here. He's more of this underneath type of player now. And Tank Dell's tiny. I love Tank Dell, though. Tank Dell gets separation. Tank Dell can make plays. Joe Mixon's now the running back. He had 30 carries in week one, y'all, and he was productive. He's thick, 220. He can break tackles. He can catch. He's really the all-around guy. Just doesn't have the juice anymore. And then there's CJ Stroud, which I have some numbers for CJ Stroud, Robert, that I think is going to be interesting and leads me into, I think, a way that Chicago can win this game. Okay. So CJ Stroud, I took his numbers from last year, and I want to know, where does he throw the most on the field? Where does he win? And this is going to hurt some of the Mitch Trubisky guys, but this is more common with quarterbacks. If you're right-handed, throwing to the right is easier than throwing to the left. So if you look at behind the line of scrimmage, if you look at intermediate, and you look at deep, everywhere, right and middle are better PFF grades than throwing left. The only one that he's better throwing left is only slightly, and it's short passes, and point 0.3 worse than the middle of the field is left, and then short right is, I mean, a small sample size, but it's significantly different, Robert. So I know you like PFF grades. So just as a reference, y'all, 70 is about, I would say, good. In the 60s is maybe above average. Anything above 70, you start going 80, very good. 90 is elite. Jalen Johnson, everybody, was 92, I believe, PFF grade week one. So with his spray chart, right? So deep passing is where CJ Stroud was his best last year. He was elite. 99.3 was his PFF grade. That's insane. Number one in the NFL. But deep right was 93.1. Deep middle was 99.9. Deep left was 80.2. If we go intermediate, and this is the last one I'll do, then I'll tell you my why. Intermediate, right was 85. Middle was 84.5. Left was 55. So if you're thinking of a way of how to limit the passing game, to me, I think the Bears are set up. The D end on the right side, Montez Sweat, that's our best D end. So you're automatically going to have more length, more pass rush coming from that side, which is something he doesn't like. And I think our corner on that side
It
to his
is.
right is a little better than our corner to the left. No offense to the player of the week, defensive player of the week, Tyreek Stevenson, but Jalen Johnson is a stud. So if we're going to squeeze this passing game and make them win in other areas, I think the Bears are built to do that and make CJ Stroud do things he's not as comfortable with and throw left.
Right. I mean, okay, so Nick, we wear a lot of hats here. Sometimes we talk like coaches, sometimes we talk like scouts, sometimes we talk like fans, sometimes we talk like analysts. Okay, so let me put on my analyst hat for a brief moment and say this is a tough matchup for the Bears at a tough time. The Bears are unusually well equipped to test themselves against the Texans. The Texans don't have the D tackles the Titans did, so the Bears interior gets a break. But Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones have their work cut out for him. It's an NFL rematch that I've frankly been excited about since the moment I saw this schedule where Darnell Wright will once again go up against Will Anderson. And I'm excited to see what that looks like. But Danielle Hunter against Braxton Jones, I've seen that movie a few many times. I hate that series. And so that's something where the Bears are going to have to figure out something. Also, you mentioned their receivers. Well, we saw this in the playoffs last year, didn't we? When you strap up a team's receivers, the quarterback does not just magically have a guy open. So if the Bears secondary really wants to establish themselves, this would be the game to do it. And if they do, maybe the Bears get a shot. But their offense, I cannot bet on them right now. I could tell you it's possible the offense gets back on track and legitimately shocks D'Amico Ryans because they did so much wrong that it's gonna be medium hard to game plan against Caleb Williams because you're not tailoring anything. You're just breaking out the standard anti-rookie playbook because Caleb did not prove that you need to do anything else. So in theory, I guess, Nick, there's like a little bit of potential X factor to what if Caleb just plays well, but as an analyst, this one could go south in a hurry, especially if the Bears offense does not get online quickly. Now let's change to me talking from a coach perspective. I think we give Stroud more credit than he deserves because here's why, okay? Normally, we either give the receiver credit or we give the quarterback credit.
Hmm?
Sometimes, if the receiver already had a big name, then we will give Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins some credit. But because the whole NFL media, except for select fantasy analysts, because I've seen them, missed on Nico Collins, we have given Stroud all of the credit for the fact that Nico is unbelievable. And
Yep.
he's separating left, right, and center. This dude had 1,300 yards in 15 games last year. And so you talk about the matchup, Jalen Johnson versus Nico Collins. Yo, if we can control him and force Stroud to win the game, throwing to Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, yeah, I bet that sounds like scary names. But we're talking about one guy who's coming off of a compound fracture in his leg, and we're talking about another guy who Buffalo didn't want anymore. And
Yep.
I'm not saying that that means that the Bears are definitely in great territory, but all you got to do, Nick, is be frustrating. Tyreek has to tip away one pass for every two that are completed. Kyler Gordon has to just frustrate one look and force Stroud to hold onto the ball a little longer than he wants to, and Billings finds a way to show up. It's gonna be a heck of a test because if I'm the Bears, I want to just make them waste Tunsil. Put Sweat and everybody else as far away from Tunsil as possible and rush Stroud right at his face. And don't get any pressure on the left side. Whatever. Who cares? Like, we'll live without it. I am not going to tell you I think the Bears will win this game. Analyst Robert already spoke for that. But I'm going to tell you, I had somebody ask me, Nick, should I take the Texans in Survivor? Hell no. The Bears can win this game.
Yes.
It's not out of the realm of possibility at all. They're not
Mhm.
playing the 49ers. I think the Texans right now are a hotter brand than they are a good ball club because I don't think the Colts are that good. And the Colts took the Texans down to the wire. So that's kind of where I sit. Sunday night is a night where anything can happen. I hate the fact that I'm going to have to wait an entire football day to see the second installment of Caleb Williams.
Right.
But that's my biggest gripe about this game. It's house money. And my goodness, Nick, if the stars align and Caleb throws, like, let's say that Caleb gives the Bears 215, two scores, clean game. And the Bears get their run game working just enough that they pound out a 26-24 like scrappy win. If the Bears come out of this game 2-0, oh my goodness.
Yep.
All bets are off. This train may get off the rails. And if they come
Yep.
out of it 1-1, even if they're buried 3-40, 1-1, rookie
Yep.
quarterback.
Yep.
I've told you on so many podcasts that I don't fully care how this offense looks style points wise until week 8 to week 10. This thing could take a minute. So I feel good. I'm excited for this
Right.
one.
So yeah, I mean, I think that, and it's very interesting because you had mentioned this. The Colts, I think the Colts are a borderline playoff team. But if people don't watch that game, and again, I know this is one game, right? We all talk about that, but it's what we have to base this season Texans on, right? Last year's Texans got embarrassed in the second round of the playoffs. Let's not forget that either. So,
By the
that
Ravens, but yes.
well, it still happened.
I know. I
So
know.
I know they're good, but that game, the Texans were up by 2 and went for it on 4th and 2, and they threw the second touchdown to Diggs, which was a sprint out, by the way. I was like, "Oh, okay," because you're limiting your options, and I hate that as a coach, for a touchdown. Then the Colts got their third 50-plus yard pass play. Like, Richardson completed 9 passes, y'all. 3 of them were 50-yard plus,
Yeah,
okay?
212 yards passing on 19 attempts is insane.
And
9
nine
completions.
completions.
9 completions.
So you do the math. That had to happen. And got them back in range, and they scored again. And on 4th down to make it a 2-point, I think it was a 2-point win overall. So they were battling, y'all. And Stroud passed for 204. He didn't pass for 300. He had a good game, 204. And so I know, like, in our minds, we're like, okay, they're going to be elite at everything. That's just not how every game or every play works. Because if you look at their team, yes, we like the receivers. Yes, we like CJ Stroud. The line, it's below average. You look at their defense, they have some dudes, right? We like Will Anderson. We like Danielle Hunter. Derek Stinley, dude. Jalen Petrie. We have PTSD from 2 years ago against the Bears. He was
Yeah,
he
he's a
was an
dog.
he was an average safety last year, for being honest. They're moving him down to nickel a little bit more now, but the interior of their D line is bad. That's where I think the Bears can win. You win interior wise. Their linebackers aren't very good either. I think that ball control, short passing, little, oh, Keenan, another 5 yards. Okay, we'll hit Komet, move the chains. I think that grinded out is how Chicago is going to win this game, because you want to have long drives to keep the passing potential off the field of Houston. So I definitely think that's it. But I think if we're going to win, Robert, I don't think you want to test the edge with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter on these crack tosses and stretch plays. You want to do inside zone. You want to do duo. You want to do trap and have it work this time, Coleman Shelton. And you want to run in the interior, sets up your play action, your short passing, get the ball out of Caleb's hands. And I think that's how they win the game.
Are they starting Kalen Bullock?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
are they
Petrie's your nickelback.
right? But I just find that hard to believe. There's no way that they don't rotate Petrie up to like free safety or something like that. They don't take him off the field, do they?
No, I don't think so.
I,
Well,
I
but
I've said
most defenses play with a nickel, just like the
Oh,
Bears. So
100%. I'm specifically saying that because I love Petrie. He's from my alma mater. He was the guy where I was like, this guy's a dude. He's
he
just
is good.
all over the tape. And
Yeah.
he is. So I would be
Oh,
afraid of him. But
sorry. Well, one other thing, y'all. Sorry. So in terms of like what defense the Texans run, they do run a 4-man front. I know in the past they've run an odd front, which would be a 5-man front. They're a 43 if they have 3 backers, or
mhm.
they're a 42 with the nickel if the nickel's on the field.
And they're a D'Amico defense. And I say that because when your head, I believe anyways, when your head coach is a defensive guy, that especially right now, not just week 2, but 2024 current NFL, Nick, I'm becoming a believer in defensive coaches. Flus needs to earn his way into this because I'm more actually talking about the McDonald's and the D'Amico Ryans and et cetera, et cetera. But some of these defenses that iterate are frustrating offenses at such a level that if your defensive coordinator isn't Steve Spagnuolo, then you've just got another guy compared to what LaFleur, et cetera, are going to dream up. But some of these
Mhm.
best defensive minds in football are actually outwitting the offensive coaches across from them, and it's clearly paying dividends. I mean, Stefanski got Stepanski'd in the playoffs last year by D'Amico Ryan's squad, and that's huge. Being able to hold the Browns and also scoring them, blah, blah, blah. You get it.
I yeah.
Looking at this defense, the thing D'Amico cannot scheme around is a starting rookie corner and a starting rookie safety.
I was just gonna talk about him. Yeah,
Like
you're right.
you don't scheme around that in
Nope.
week 2. So if it's me, there's one other piece to this, Nick, that we ought to talk about, and that's the fact that ironically, for a guy like Caleb Williams, there's no easier read, there's no easier throw than just sending it. Send it all the way down the field, baby. And so if it's me, especially if D'Amico Ryans trots out a lot of the same match cover 4, get Rome on a post if he's healthy. If not, get DJ. This is a great game to activate Tyler Scott. All of the speed that you can muster, send them. Find play action looks, or maybe straight drop back, but probably going to do it at a play action where you can get them vertical. Because this is the kind of game, Nick, in my opinion, where D'Amico is probably going to make you pay if you try to slowly bleed your way down the field. But gaining yards in massive chunks, it obviously worked for Anthony Richardson. And
Yeah.
unless the Titans batten the hatches down, I think it could work for the Bears too. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I I wanted more of the ball control because I fear Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson against our tackles. But it is vulnerable. So let
You
me
got to
let
do
me
both, right? Like
well,
you're talking,
you have to
I'm
mix
not
it up. You
saying you
can't just
can
do all one.
you
Yeah.
can't throw downfield every play. Like
Right.
everybody knows that. And so I'm more thinking, Nick, that if you can get your duo going, right? If you can get your duo going, and then you pair it with a little bit of B gap trap, and or not B gap trap, B
R-
gap power, and then
Play
you
action
pair
boots
pair
in
it with
there.
a little bit of trap, play action boot. Slowly but
Mhm.
surely, you're gonna get that defense sinking in and
Yep.
down towards the line of scrimmage, and that's when you try to catch them on a 2nd and 8, playing cover 4 with Rome posting right behind DJ Moore, who's running the dig. Safety bites down on the
Yep.
dig. Caleb
Yep.
Williams laces the post over the top. Bears Twitter loses their
You
minds.
you're talking Mills, man. I love Mills, the concept.
It's
So
awesome.
here's the other thing too that you're the vulnerability of the Texans defense is the interior. Honestly, it's everything except for Petrie, who is a little. I mean, I like him. His PFF grade wasn't great last year. The two DNs and Stingley, but the corner on the island, y'all. The Bears lived with it last year. There were some good plays by Tyreek Stevenson. There were some bad plays. Is Kamari Lassiter, y'all. 5'11", 186, so he's not physically imposing, ran a 4.65 40, and that's why he dropped. He was a guy that could have been
Is
maybe a
he the
first round
Mizzou
pick.
kid?
What?
Is he the Mizzou kid?
Nope, Georgia.
Georgia. Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
you're thinking of the guy who went to the Lions,
Yes.
and it's Rick Straw.
Who was also slow. You're
Yes,
right. It
yes.
is Rakestraw.
So so so
Dude,
Lassiter,
that's a near unplayable 40 time. Like
I know, and that's why he fell, and he had some potential. So, and I know 40 times aren't everything, but
at
you have to
corner,
be able
dude.
to turn and run. And so, if you have a slow corner on one side, okay, and then the safety they're starting is a third round pick. And I liked Kalen Bullock out of USC, but he doesn't like the tackle. So you have two guys. It's not like okay, it's a first round pick and we're going to see what we got in him. This is a mid to late second and a third that are starting in a secondary. So if you're thinking, hey, I wonder if DJ Moore and Keenan Allen can trick them with route running, they certainly can. So you could certainly pick on a corner for sure.
Oh
I
yeah.
I mean, it would be fun to pick on them short, then pick on him long. Like you could kind of do it all day. So that's certainly a way. I would like the slow game because I'm worried Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter could get to Caleb.
Nick, I'm gonna take my logical hat off. We're gonna take that one off, and now I'm gonna put on my fan hat for a hot moment. Because
Mhm.
there's one other X factor coming into this game that I am intrigued about, okay? And this is complete theory. There is no evidence for this, Nick. I'm going entirely off my gut, right? But I believe that in the NFL, you are either, if you have any personality at all, you are either a hero or you are a villain, right? They're very easy to typify. Josh Allen is a prototypical hero. Tom Brady lived his whole life as a villain. Aaron Rodgers lived his whole life as a villain. Uh, Russell Wilson was best as a hero and then kind of became a villain, and so too his career fell off. You get it, right?
Mhm.
I don't know if you've felt like this, but Caleb has always struck me as a villain, and I have no problem with that. I think that fits Chicago perfectly, where Caleb is more going to piss off other fans than it is have outside Bears or people outside Chicago that just like Caleb because he's just so
I know where you're
nice.
going with this. It's got me excited.
And I think villains play better on the road because that's where they're natural. Shutting up a crowd is easier, I think, for some people than playing for a crowd that wants you to succeed. It's the difference, Nick. You've done this before. It's the difference between going to work and doing what you do versus explaining to some of your closest family members what you do. Where
Mhm.
it's easier to clam up in the when you're near and dear those who are near and dear to you. But then you get out and you're by yourself. You're with your boys. But the only people that think you can win this game in the whole stadium are you guys. And your goal is to make this place as quiet as you possibly can. And maybe it's just me, but I wonder if it will settle Caleb out a little bit because
Well, can you imagine, Robert? Like, okay, national TV, Caleb has a game. The Bears upset the Texans, who everyone loves the Texans.
everybody loves the Texans.
And then you're like, "Oh, T, we did this." As a coach, winning on the road, big games on the road is way more fun than winning on the at home because
Hmm.
the crowd's silent and you're like, "Oh, where was the hype?" And then all the cheers and stuff. It's awesome.
And who knows? Maybe the moment will be too much for him. But I look at, we've only got 3 games, and he looked comfortable on the road in Buffalo. He looked nervous at home against Cincinnati. He looked nervous again at home against Tennessee. Took me a minute there. That's sad.
You're
But
fun.
the point being, I cannot say any of this is for sure. This is a gut feel, Nick. It's more me saying that I wonder if while Caleb's developing that natural rhythm, there's something about playing in front of 65,000 screaming Bears fans, knowing you're the reason your team's still behind, that would create more nerves. Whereas shutting up these fans, you can tune them out because they're going to cheer when the other team does well and they're
Yeah.
going to boo when you do well. But that's easy, right? Because that's your own internal dialogue too, right? Is everybody's against me. Chip
I
on my shoulder. We'll see.
the other thing too, man, the more I look at this defense, they have they have 4 guys that are players. That's it. Because you look through the other safety, because we talked about Jalen Petrie, we talked about Kalen Bullock. The other one's Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward's 33, Robert, and
It
his
is
game last
hard
week
to play
was
DB past 31.
on
It is
and like
hard to play
like
DB
not
past
good,
31.
right? You go through it. Al Shahir, what's his last name?
It's Aziz
Oh,
Al Shahir.
there we go. I said all backwards. Anyways, I mean, he's not really been a starter. Now he is. He's a below average linebacker. Um, the other guy from Alabama, Henry Tutu, he's okay. He was 81 out of 82 linebackers last year, PFF grade. Interior, y'all,
Man, was he
if you
really?
want to talk about a revenge game,
I thought his tape was fine out of school. What happened to him?
well, he
I didn't realize
ran
he
a
got drafted in the
4.62, went right in
fifth.
the
Is
fifth
it?
round.
It's just that he's small, huh?
Yeah,
Like
he's small, dude.
you
But
can't
he's
wait.
small, but he runs a 4.62. He's not like small and
But
fast.
he's 230. That's just I maybe anybody who's listening and you hear this, you heard it earlier with the corner thing. Draft scouting really is. I've talked to a bunch of scouts, Nick. I know you have too. It's shocking how commonly people go, he weighed at 228. I don't want him. And
Yep.
it's that simple. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but what
Yeah.
about the tape? And that's how Ivan Pace goes
The
undrafted and
Well,
ends up
Zach
playing starting
Thomas, like you
ball.
go through that. But
Exactly.
I was getting to the revenge game, y'all. Mario Edwards, Bears legend,
I cannot believe he's still playing.
is their starting D tackle. But again, yeah. So even he's starting, he's 30.
He's 30.
I mean, and he's not a dude, you
Extended
know?
him. And then he got into legal trouble. Rip.
Yeah, the other D tackles just okay. I mean, I'm just saying this could actually be a high scoring game as well. So, Robert, we got to wrap this up, okay?
Yep.
But we need to have predictions. That's where we're at. So last week we were pretty good. We both had the Titans, or yeah, their actual total of 17. I think you were what 21 and I was 28, I think, something like that.
Hmm.
So I'll let you start this one. What is going to happen this Sunday night?
So, putting the analyst hat back on, right? I think it's a little too early for this offense. And if there's one thing that Stroud has done really well, it's protect the football. The Bears may get a bunch of sacks, the Bears may get a bunch of stops, but I can't bet on them outscoring the Texans with anything other than the Bears part of my soul that always bets on the Bears. So right now, I'm going to say that it ends up, let's go 16. That's, if you're counting at home, that's one touchdown drive and 4 field goal drives where the offense can move the ball a little. They just can't get it to pay dirt. And the Texans hang a healthy 24 points on them. That's where my head is at right now. But I'm not confident in this. Texans, dude, you heard me say it. I was confident the Titans were going to score 17. I was like, this offense is not good enough. I don't know where people are pulling higher numbers out.
Yep.
But the Houston game, if a couple matchups go in the Bears' favor, which easily can, Andrew Billings is going to mash Juice Scruggs, or at least he should, right?
Yes.
Javon Dexter up against, what is this, Shaq Mason? I'm about it. Like, there are some matchups up front that have me saying that while I understand I'm talking about the offense that just ran the ball against DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart, I think that there are Bears matchups that they can take advantage of if they don't have to sell out to defend the pass the way that Indianapolis did, right? So that's a big if, but if they do it, I mean, you've seen it, Nick. I know you 14 years of coaching and enough watching the NFL. When a defense gets a couple matchups the offense thought they had, they start to squirm. The whole thing goes to hell. And if we get one of those, this could be a surprisingly low-scoring game that is a real brawl to the end. I think, Nick, if it's a shootout, I like the Texans. They've done it before. But if it's a brawl, I like the Bears. So here's what I'll say. I already gave you my prediction. But if the Bears can hold the Texans to 14, 17 points, I think there's a real shot for the Bears to steal enough.
So your prediction is, you said what, 16 Chicago?
My prediction is 16 to 24 Texans if it's final.
Okay. I'm with you on a lot of it. I also think, I mean, they have a pretty good field goal kicker. I think we have the edge in punting. Love Troy Taylor. I think it's going to be a little bit more high scoring, even despite the Bears having a good defense. I'm going to go actually 27-24 Houston.
That'd be great. Like, if the Bears come out of this with Caleb having gone, let's say Caleb goes 2-15, 2 scores, and a strip sack fumble that ends up being the reason that they lose the game, dude, I'll live with that. I don't want to go through another week of explaining 93 yards. Like,
it won't happen again. Won't happen again. Again, y'all, we like the comments. I think that's going to be one of my favorite parts about our podcast. So why don't you can put in your score prediction. The other thing you can put in there, because I mean, we read them. I read almost all of the comments. Is maybe a Bear that you're excited to watch this Sunday, something they might do, someone you might think have a good game. So score prediction and that, and then what do you want the emoji to be, Robert?
I'm looking through right now. I'm thinking, okay, so I have no idea if it's, you know what? I want to see the octopus emoji. Do you have a better one?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Go with it, man.
I'm sitting here
we've been rotating because I had apple and you had pumpkins. So
we'll go back and forth and really test people. I believe the official emote of the podcast, for what it's worth, if you don't know, the pumpkin always works. It will always make me smile. I will always smile when I see the pumpkin, because that was the one that kind of got this started.
and just officially on record, Robert, I want people to know you can call me Waylon, right? Even if you don't know me, I'm okay. You can use my last name, okay?
Oh,
y'all know me like that.
Yeah.
Just having fun.
No
all right.
Comment. No, I'm only sighing because that's the kind of thing that gets me fired up, but I can't be fired up about that because I don't know Dan like that.
Can't do that. Anyways,
also,
y'all.
what? somebody being able to call you by your first name, but they can't call you by your last name. I have people I don't want you to call me by my first name. Like,
Right. It literally makes 0 sense. It's a get off my lawn, just old guy stuff. Anyway, y'all, follow Robert at Robert K. Schmitz on Twitter. I'm at _ Nick Whalen. Again, score predictions, who you want to have a good game or who you kind of looking forward to watching. And then I guess Robert's going octopus is the emoji. Thanks, y'all. We appreciate you.
we love it, y'all. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Let your friends know about the show. Like and review it. We've got 115 on Spotify and 65 on Apple. I want to see those numbers go up. I'm paying attention. And it better be 5-star. But
Those are rookie numbers. We got to pump those up.
Those are rookie numbers. And we got to get to at least 93 reviews on Apple. But let me know if you're having any problems. I saw somebody say, "Why aren't you posting this on Apple?" And then immediately went and checked. And I was like, we are. But so if there's some kind of error, feel free to DM me on Twitter, comment it below in the YouTube. We'll figure it out. But thanks so much for listening. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the game. Enjoy college football Sunday or Saturday. Wow. And we'll catch you later. Bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with us.